Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to Out of the Park Baseball 23. This is episode number 3. One last time, I'm going to ask you for this one. Do please take just a quick moment, even though we are just getting started on this episode. If you've seen the first couple of episodes, you should know by now whether you like it or not. And if you do want to support this series and want to see it grow and continue for a long time coming, I need that algorithm support here for these first few episodes. So drop below, click that like button, leave a quick algorithm comment. And if you have not yet, do please subscribe, as it greatly helps the small channel grow. All right, let's get on with the action here. And I have proceeded a week forward. Now, remember, midweek last time we made some changes to the roster. We gutted what talent there was in the minor leagues and brought it up to the major league level. And then literally one day later, our best player, Pedrero, went down injured for a month and a half. Really bad timing on that part. So there was some give and take. We had more quality within the team itself, 6 players coming up, and then we lost one of our best players. And really, there's only 2 of them. So to lose either one of those is a huge blow to a team that, compared to everybody else, is definitely a below average team to begin with. Now, adding that talent certainly helped, but losing one of those 2 key components is just absolutely devastating to this group. Despite that, though, that improved talent has shown that it is making a difference. It is having an impact. Take it with the caveat, though, we played at home this week. We did win 4 out of 6 games that we played. So we got 4 wins, 2 losses. But again, that's a mixed bag, right? We're playing at home. And at the moment, anyway, we are still near the bottom of the league in every important statistical category. Offense, runs, average in the bottom third. Home runs, we're middle of the road. But that's because both of those talented players that we have are guys with the capability of hitting the long ball and hitting it well. So they are providing most of that by themselves. And this is not a sport that 2 players can really just carry you very far. They're going to get you some wins, but they're only going to get you so far with that. ERA, next to last out of the entire 30 teams. We are that bad off. K's, 25th. Defensive efficiency, 24th. So we are lacking in everything. We're lacking in everywhere. So out of this random draw that we ended up with that made up this league, we've truly picked up what I like to do. So if you are unfamiliar with the channel, if this is your first introduction to Decathlon Gamer, that is me. What I do here is, this is a typical scenario that I set myself up with. I set myself up with a difficult challenge, and I love to build from nothing. So when I set this up initially and randomly picking a team that would be mine, I had no setup, no say in how this team would be compared to the other 29 in this tier. What I was manually setting up was that we were going to be in this bottom tier and that we were going to have to start from the bottom. But we've easily could have drawn randomly the best team out of the 30 here. But it didn't happen. It did not happen. Now we have a good owner in Phil Knight, right? CEO of Nike. We have a good owner who has some resources, and I can't be fired from the job. So there is long-term potential to build this club up. But the random draw ended up being us at the bottom end. So for me, I'm actually happy about that because I like to build from the bottom. Just for a comparison, for those who, again, are not familiar with the channel, I have my other recently started series is a college basketball one. And I turned that, like this, into a promotion relegation system. That one, unlike this, instead of 3 tiers, it has 22 and sort of a 23rd tier. And we are right at the bottom of that. building from the lowest, worst team that we could get our hands on, and going from there. So this, to resemble that, does make me happy. I'm glad that we are in a rebuild mode and not in a win now, let's get straight up into the second tier in the first year of this game. That being said, let's start working on that project. Here's a little more confirmation to just how bad off our random draw was. Everybody had the same base point here. I mean, this was entirely how things turned out. Now, Ruben Flint, great shortstop, third best out of the 30 teams. And Pedrero is really solid too. But of course, both of these guys are on the tail ends of their career. Flint, okay, he's 28. He's not there yet. He's got some years ahead of him. But he is in an interesting situation, and we'll take a look at him here real quick. He's only making $500,000, which is fantastic. But he's only signed through this year. He has an expiring contract, and we are in a world of hurt for this guy because he could leave for free, and we'd be in a lot of trouble if that happens. More so, to stay, he's willing to sign, but he wants nearly $40 million a year to stay, and that absolutely just devastates our long-term stability of the club to try to keep him around. Now, I could potentially sign him and keep him around for a number of years, and through that process eventually use him in a trade a couple years down the road, and have him be the core of the team for the next couple of years. And it won't completely tie our hands because we have a lot more than $40 million to play with. That's kind of just scratching the surface. So there is a chance to hang on to Flint, and I would love to hang on to. It's a lot of money to do that and keep one core piece in place. But my only problem is I really only have two guys that offer us any value in trade, and he's one of them. So to build long term, we're going to have to use these pieces. We're going to have to use the pieces we have. And honestly, we lack pieces. We lack anything. The only quality that this team has right now is financial flexibility. We are very, very low in terms of what we're actually spending on the roster right now. If we pay Pedrero, who's 32 already, and he's going to decline, he's going to get worse. He, even now, is only the 6th best right fielder in the league. For us, he's great, but across the league, he's only good. And we're in the 3rd tier, and he's 32. I 100% committed. I've brought the question up, and I haven't had anything in the comments regarding whether I should hang on to him or not, and I was kind of hoping for some input there. But without the input, it's clear. It is absolutely clear. We are a team that is not contending right now. We are a team that is very much at the bottom of the league. You look across our roster outside of Sam Nance and Danny Santana and Alex Nixon, who are average in this league, even after gutting our minor leagues to get a handful of our best players now in place to make us better. Fussell is one of the guys I called up from AAA. He is our best starting pitcher already, and that only boosted us to 26th out of 30. We lack in any way, and our prospects aren't good either. So we don't have a minor league team or a minor league set of prospects that can start that build project long term. We don't have players in place right now, and most of the roster we have is old. What we have is financial flexibility and literally nothing else. So most of our moves early on are going to have to happen via free agency. We're going to have to pick up players that way and through the draft and start building long term. What assets I have, though very limited and not good, I'm going to have to the best as I can, start packaging those guys together and move them on. And then ultimately, the only decision that remains, because Pedrero, it's done and dusted. We must send Pedrero out and get what we can for him. Flint is the only question that remains. Do we sign Flint for an absurd sum? For me, anything over about 25 million is just much too much for a player when you have roster limitations, when you have cap limitations and the finances that are involved. And he wants nearly 40. I think we might be able to get him signed for about 35 to 37. And if that's the case, it may be worth it to hang on to him as a core piece to continue building on a year or 2 years from now, and trade him then. In the meantime, he'll help us win some games, but that's not an entirely good thing. Where we stand right now is somewhat problematic. In the real world, if you tank, if you are at the back end, you are going to get the first or second or third pick in the draft. But that's not the case for us, because we have this associated draft where all 90 professional teams are drafting. It's the major leagues, and then that second tier, the championship league, and then the professional league, which means those 60 all go first. Then we're getting 61st, 62nd, 63rd. So our draft picks aren't going to be amazing. Now, the only thing is our draft picks are still going to be relative to the tier that we are playing in. So a 61st pick is still better than a 90th pick, but it means we're not going to get outstanding players at the 61st pick. It's the equivalent of the third round in a regular major league draft. It's going to be a deeper draft, though. Should be a deeper draft with a larger pool. So there actually might still be some significant quality. Or not. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with Out of the Park Baseball, the player development updates that you get periodically here, this is all about your own scouting of your players. Meaning it's perception based. So this is not coming with 100% accuracy as to what their ratings are. So for example, Tony Gonzalez, we could see that he is declining as a player. His control rating was a 50, it's now a 45. It might have been a 45 already. It may be a 40 now. It may be a 50 now. The accuracy is not guaranteed. It's going to fall within a range though, so he's definitely not a 20 in terms of his control. It's definitely not an 80 in terms of his control. It is going to be somewhere in between. But that plus or minus always exists. And there are going to be players that are going to be rated better than players and not perform. And then players that on paper look worse are going to do better. And the same thing happens in real life all the time, because it's all scouting, it's all estimates. So it is an estimate. With that out of the way, Tony Gonzalez at 37 is getting worse, and he is declining. He's gone from a 3-star evaluation now to a 2.5-star. Steve Bradshaw is somebody who is a little up, a little down from where we were with our view on him. Carrillo as a young player, this was the guy we brought forward, center field player. We brought him up from the minor leagues when we made those moves a couple weeks back, and we are instantly seeing an improvement, or at least how we are evaluating him at the very least. Juan Flores, who's down at AA, seems to have made some improvement. In fact, our overall and potential view of him has gone up significantly from 1.5 to 2.5 stars, which means either he is just doing really, really good at AA, in which case maybe we need to give him a shot at AAA to see how he performs there and see if the subsequent, if he follows that up with performance against better competition. I think jumping from that sort of rating can often come with a bit of maybe over evaluation. The guy's performing well and suddenly they think he's great. Put him against better competition and he might not perform so well, and you go kind of right back to where they were. So these numbers can inflate quite easily. I think a move to AAA might be in order, though, if Juan Flores is doing that well that we think that both his control, his movement, and his stuff is all better than what we had previously thought it was. I'm going to go ahead and do just what I was talking about a moment ago. Juan Flores, I'm going to bring him from AA up to AAA, give him a shot there, see how he does before considering moving him up into the major leagues. And meanwhile, Marrero, who's one of our bottom end starters, clearly just not doing well. He's 1-6 at AAA, so we're going to bring Marrero down, and we're going to bring on Juan Flores up into AAA to replace him. Sign of the progress of a player. Now, these little indicators do tend to show that players need to be moved up or down, and you can see a lot of our guys at AA and AAA are just not good enough, and we're going to need to build from the ground up. Meanwhile, our single A team has done well, and they're not claiming that these guys need to go down, and that's a real sign of that's where we start to see some potential, because most of these players are older anyway. It's hard to fathom just how bad our random draw was. A majority of our players are much too old and lack any sort of potential. There's no development to come from them, which was part of the reason why our development list was pretty short. There wasn't that many players showing signs. Ed Salazar looks like somebody who might need to get involved at a different level than where he's assigned, which is I guess that would be high A class, and this is the rookie class. That's the short season one. They have changed the minor league structure here in these last couple of years, and I think it did go into effect that all of the major league teams, the 30 teams, now have a set structure where you're having 5 teams below. The short season, the rookie stuff, a lot of that is designed to pick up your draftees for the most part that you had for the year, because the draft happens partway into the year, and then you have these shorter seasons that happen later on in the year, and it's designed to get those guys straight out of the draft and straight into your system and playing competitive games, and then getting enough time to start evaluating and go, okay, yeah, this guy's not good enough, and you make way for the new draftees the next year as a result. And then those who are good enough start making their way into the lower ends of your full season minor league teams. It's a complicated system. Think of it like the youth teams in a soccer club or football club, where you have your reserves, AAA, and you have your U19s, which is like your AA, and your U17s, and except for the difference here being that the age gaps are much closer. But if you look at our short season guys, they're all 18, 19, 20-year-old players, and here they're getting a little bit older, 19, 20, 21-year-old players, a couple 22-year-olds, and then 21, 22, 23, just a single player at 24, 25, getting old enough where they should be getting close. You get past that 25, you really should be either right on the edge. If you're more than 25, you should be on the edge of pro, or you're gone. You're out of the system if you're not progressing, alongside other players. So Galinas at 38 has no future for us. Galinas is going to be gone, but Galinas was at the major league level. He's one of the guys I dropped down. He just accepted the lower assignment. David Castro is going to be gone. Figueroa is not going to cut it if he's this low. Look how many players we have at the bottom end of this. I mean, they're almost all, other than Oscar Ruiz, they're all 27 plus and not good enough. So we're going to have to really, really restructure our system here, and it's going to take some time. It is not going to happen overnight. But I do suspect there's going to be a lot of free agents this coming year, and we're going to start making some wholesale changes to especially our minor league system and even our major league system. And we might be worse next season than we are this season as I try to reshape this thing. One important category to look at, especially as I'm trying to maintain roster flexibility, is the upcoming free agents. What they're asking and whether there's any point whatsoever in trying to hang on to these guys. The main thing that we're looking at here is the age of this group. The entire group is 31 years of age and older, with only 2 exceptions. Flint at 28 and Alex Nixon at 28. Now, Nixon's been doing a decent job, plays center field, and I would like to hang on to Nixon. But with a 269 average, he's not putting up stellar numbers. He's just putting up adequate numbers. Now, if he wanted $4 million, $5 million, $6 million, I'd be happy to pay that. But right now, his demand is 13.7, and the signability is hard, meaning I'm really not going to be able to fluctuate on that very much. I may get him for about 13 flat. Even then, that sounds pretty iffy. So Nixon wants 13 million to stick around. Flint wants 37 million to stick around and is a hard signing. Like I said, Pedro is gone. I will move on Pedro for prospects. All of these other guys that are older, I am going to do what I can to trade them for literally any prospects in return, because we're not going to get much worse than we are. There's going to be free agents out there. I will be able to go in and sign a lot of guys to replace them. Short term, I'm going to hurt our chances of winning many games this season, but we're 18 and 25. It doesn't matter. But the Flint one is tempting because he's got value. It's just, that's expensive. Early All-Star voting has 2 players from the entire team in the mix, and those 2 are Sam Nance, who actually coming in right now number 1 at third base. He's hitting .317. He's not having himself a great season by any means. He only has 9 RBI out of 186 at bats. I mean, that's not very many runs batted in. 3 home runs is not much either, but he's doing enough. He's hitting the ball well enough, apparently. Meanwhile, Ruben Flint, this one makes a lot more sense. 13 home runs, 27 total runs batted in. Of course, 13 of those are those home runs. And there could have been more, where you have guys on base. Easily could have 17, 18, 19 of those from home runs. Long ball is his thing. He apparently does not hit guys in too often. But at 295, he's doing okay. This is not great, but he's a good defender. He has his value. He really does. And I think I might pay the guy and keep him around in the system for a couple of years anyway before flipping him for prospects. And there you go. Actually, we just got a message from him today that he wants to stay here in Eugene. His family loves it here, and he's willing to work with us. So that's a good sign. I think maybe it's time to make that move. Here is our first long-term move, is retaining the one core piece that's at least going to be valuable for the next few years. All right, so we're going to try to offer something that's a little back-end heavy. Years 4 and 5 are the most valuable, locked in at $40 million. The 5th year is a player option. No trade clauses or anything like that, so he's not safe from that, which does give us that flexibility to move him on as he gets a little bit older if we are still rebuilding in a couple of seasons, if we haven't quickly turned this into a winning team. $37 million in year 3, 34 in year 2, and just shy of $32 million next season. That already makes it a lot more affordable than what I was initially looking at of going 37 million. Just not a big fan of that one. Let's see how he does with this one. Okay, all right. Sounds reasonable. He's not immediately saying yes, which means I think we're in the ballpark that we might get a yes on this one. We might get a no, but that does mean we've done a good job anyway in terms of this evaluation. I think we've made a quality offer here, and we're not getting screwed, and we may get a yes. Just 2-8 in our last 10. We're playing okay at home, but on the road we are really, really struggling without Pachero. We are really struggling. He should be back from his injury here pretty soon, but at 21-33, yeah. If I had not made this clear enough already, we are in a rebuild right off the bat. I mean, this team is not going to be winning, even if Pedrero is healthy. Or adding a couple pieces in, it is not going to turn this into a winner. This is a team that is way, way off where it needs to be. In fact, our ERA is now dead last. We are the worst team in the professional league in terms of ERA. Our strikeouts are not much better. Our defensive efficiency barely helps out. And offensively, we're not good there either. When we are very much near the bottom, we are better than a handful, but only a handful. So the one area where we were neutral, home runs, with Pedro out injured, has fallen off, and we are slipping into almost the bottom third now in that category as well. So yes, it's season written off. We are not going to focus on this season anymore. Let's start that build project, which means we are far enough in. We've played 54 games now out of 144, meaning we are more than a third of the way into the season. I think it is time to start trying to move some pieces. We cannot move Pedrero yet. We need him healthy to get his max value, get him back to playing well before we try to move him along. I would start putting prospects in the starter spots, but I don't have prospects to really bring along and try building for the future. I'll look to see what I have, but I think it's going to happen more out of making some trades, and that's probably our place to start, because right now there is no free agency to tap into to pick up some players, because we do have that cap flexibility, and we have not heard back yet on our man on whether he is signing that contract. It's been a week, but nothing on that one. Assuming he does sign, we'll still have some other flexibility, but we're not going to be able to go out and sign any major players with him coming in. There's still going to be some work to do. But the trade market is one place I can start with. Take the older players who can kind of sort of play and get some prospects for the future that have higher potential than them. But we're not going to get good ones in return. That's the problem. We're not going to find any big-time prospects that way. All right, it's a big move. It's a costly move, but it does lock down our one within age range piece, our one core piece to this team. That is Ruben Flint has locked down an average deal of $36.6 million per year. 5 years, fifth year as an option year. It's a huge amount of money, and it does make him more tradable and less tradable at the same time. He no longer has an expiring contract that makes him hard to sign for teams, makes him worrisome on whether they can sign him or not. He's locked down, but at the same time, it's a lot of money. So a lot of teams now look at that and go, oof, gosh, I don't necessarily want to trade for that. But if they want to win now, it's still pretty easy to move them. What I'm doing right now has not worked out in my favor so far. There's 90 teams. Makes it harder to get what you want out of this. But I am using the waiver wire. I'm checking it about once a week on this one. looking for young players. I'm not looking for older guys. That's not going to help us long term, but I'm looking for anybody 25 and under that might offer some quality, checking my scouting accuracy on them. And because I need trade pieces anyway, I have no problem taking on guys that I really don't have space for or a position for, because ultimately I can flip those players. At least that's the idea. So I'm trying to get anybody who's kind of rated above about 2 stars and give them a shot. If they don't fit in with the team, we can turn around. We can use what options we have to do something to help build out this roster, especially with some younger players. All right, so I've gotten actually all 3 of these guys this time around. This is the third go round for me trying to get somebody, and it was declined the previous times as other teams with higher priority had all claimed them as well, and so I did not get them. But this time I get all 3. We got one guy out of the White Sox organization, one guy out of the Reds organization, and one from our level, the Montreal Expos. So just a quick update on changes that we've made recently and a little while ago, as it's been more than a month now since we made those changes. It's late June here. Remember, we brought up 3 pitchers from the minor leagues, 3 batters from the minor leagues, field players, and then we also just picked up 3 players off of waivers. All 3 players we just picked up were relievers. Relievers are the most common ones. They're on more controllable contracts, and when they don't work out, they get waived to make space for others. It's very, very common, and then they end up. A lot of your older players, a lot of your players in your 30s are relievers. Younger ones were guys that were supposed to be starters that didn't necessarily pan out. Well, anyway, you go on Ibar. His stuff at our level is untouchable. He just doesn't have very great control. He's got a lot of movement too. And so far for Ibar has 1 inning pitched. He gave up no runs, and he struck out all 3 guys that he faced. Or is it 2? No, he struck out 2. I guess that would be 2. Yeah. He struck out 2 out of the 3 guys he faced, though, anyway. Also striking out 2 was Duarte, who struck out 2 in 1 1/3 inning, so he faced 4 batters, struck out 2 of those, and then Phil Trainer just got added in as well as we made way. I was able to send 2 guys down to AAA without them having to go onto waivers, and then I sent 1 onto waivers. But you can see just how much better our pitching staff is right now than it was at the start of the season, when I only had a few guys that were 2.5 stars and 1 reliever that was 3 stars. The rest of our relievers were 2 stars or worse. The rest of these guys or most of these guys anyway, have come up from either the minor leagues or these ones we've picked up off of waivers, and we are now in a position where our worst players relative to the level are 2 stars, which means they're getting better, and we should start seeing some improved performance. Fossil, Rivera, the 2 guys we brought up to replace 2 that had ERAs over 10. These guys 2.9, 3.29. They've done well. Sample size is big. They've done about 50 to 60 innings now, so that's plenty of performance, and it's better than their counterparts that were here. No new guys off of waivers, but we did have those 3 guys that got called up here, and stats would be nice to see on this one. All right, so here's a quick overview of how the players are doing now. We had no changes at catcher, and we have not done well there. Layden is struggling. How old is Layden? 34. Ouch. Yeah, both of our catchers are really, really struggling. That's a position we absolutely 100% need to address. Flint, of course, is doing extremely well. He's doing great, and we do have him signed up long-term. Sam Nance is doing really well. And that's kind of where that ends. Askew and Cornegay, there you go. So Cornegay is one of the ones we brought up, hitting 280 and 1.1 on the wins above replacement. His numbers aren't stellar, but they're good. And he's done it, in 20 fewer games than most of these guys around him. And he replaced Janord. Askew? Oh, which one? Who was the other one I brought up? Was it Akins? Or is Akins just making those appearances off the bench? I think Akins is just coming off the bench. Cornegay certainly has been a positive, so there's one good sign, one sign of improvement. Santana still suspended. How much longer is this? 2 more weeks until Santana can finally play. Meanwhile, Pedrero back in action. He's only played 28 games, and that's really hurting us. He ended up with his own 5-game suspension. No idea what that was about. I would assume it was something that happened on the field almost as soon as he was back. So it was, one of his first games back, 2-3 games into returning, and then he ended up with a 5-game suspension, which he just finished serving. So we finally have a healthy and unsuspended Pedrero, who is now trade bait. Yes, he is a fantastic player, but at the age and with that expiring contract, and we don't have $40 million to throw his way, we really need to make that trade happen soon. But the guy we brought up, Carrillo, also doing well. Ish, anyway. I mean, he's only hitting 228. He's a bit young, but we've already seen him develop, and he's definitely doing better than a lot of the other guys around. We're not a team that's, performing terribly well. But here is that sign. Here is that lineup, kind of how it's looking. It's better than it was. Layden still a problem. Akins is still a problem, but some good things. Now, how we compare, it's not good. We are right near the bottom in every category except for the home runs, and then pitching, same, right near the bottom, 13th or worst, or worse. So yeah, things have not improved. Even if we're only a few games behind San Jose, 5.5 behind Tacoma Thunder. We're not the worst team I've seen at 26-39, but we are very, very far off pace of everybody else. So the waiver wires, that's already created our first few moves. We've got some 30-somethings on the way out, and we got some under 25s pitchers that we just brought in on cheap. They were all on cheap contracts. So watching that waiver wire is going to make a difference. Keep it up with that. We've started to see a few free agents I've offered, but we are so far down the pecking order that everybody that I have offered has been picked up by other teams thus far. So I'll keep after it, though. There are some free agents out there, some guys that have been released, that have been waived and weren't signed, and then become available. So there are some options, but it's so minimal at the moment. And our first draft is not going to be until next summer. Our first draft pool will happen during the off season, so we don't even have a draft pool to look at right now. And there is no draft coming up short term. Normally there would be based on last year, but there is no based on last year right now for 60 of these organizations. So they're waiting a year to make that all happen, which really hurts things, because that means our free agent market, there's going to be a lot of competition for guys, and there's not going to be an influx of players. There's going to be some retiring players, and I have a feeling there's going to be some holes to fill, and there's going to be some rosters a little thin until next year's draft. All right, the waiver wire has started to work wonders for us. It's going well. We just picked up from the San Francisco Giants Luke Williams, third baseman, but he can play across a number of positions. I mean, he's got 7 positions that he is suitable at. That is fantastic, because he can fill in most anywhere, and he already is going to come in as one of our better players. I don't know why they would even waive him, other than presumably they didn't have space. He spent much of the year at AAA. He played 18 games with just 7 starts at the major league level, but he's done well in the limited time there. And he did well in AAA, but presumably they had to make some roster space for somebody else by a trade or something, and he was the expendable piece. But for us, that's a pretty big coup. This is a good grab, and short term, this seems to be the way to start getting some players into the team, and especially getting the 25 and unders. That'll be able to stick around with us for a little while and help reshape this roster into something a little more competitive. And here's another addition, Luis Pietri. He came from the second tier from Manchester, and another big pickup for us, as he's incredible speed. This is a leadoff type hitter or a number 9 hitter to give you kind of a second leadoff. He could play first, left field, center, right. So he is a left fielder by trade, and that is one of our weaker positions. And with the about to be healthy Danny, whatever his name was, that's been missing for 3 months, we're talking about same quality, and we're talking about a player that's 25 on league minimum and versus a player that is in his early 30s with an expiring contract coming up that has just become an expendable trade piece that hasn't even played for us, but with him on the verge of being healthy would be good. I mean, this guy was doing really good this season. Really surprised that they let him go, and actually even ended up demoting him to AAA, which makes no sense unless he started the season there. But either way, why would you waive this guy? A week later, and Luke Williams, we just added to the roster, 5 games played so far, good start with the team, has come in at number 4 on the top 100 prospects list. So there's already a big step in the right direction for us, as we just picked him up for nothing off of waivers. And on the top top minor league systems, we just jumped to number 2 on that list. That's incredible. But the main thing about that is the pieces that we just added through the waiver wire. Williams, our top prospect. Duarte, number 3 on that list. Carrillo, who we did call up from the minor leagues early on, and Ibar, who we just got. So 3 of these 5 players that have accumulated the most value for us to have us fly up this list. We'd only have 2 guys on this list otherwise, or potentially more, but if they're not in that top 100, below that 60th mark, as it's only going to show those top 5. Still, we only had a couple guys on this list at 33 and 40. For comparison, 33 and 40 would put you somewhere better than this, maybe better than this, but probably not, not better than that. So we would be somewhere down around 22nd or 23rd just a month ago on this list. But here we are now, number 2, just from paying attention to the waiver wire. So the beginnings for us are going to come from here. And you know what? For a while, they could continue to come from here. It makes perfect sense. We're a couple steps below. And if a major league team is going to start waiving guys, for us, it's pretty easy to get them on the cheap. We're down at that level where you can catch these guys as they get released. They instantly make us better. The tricky part is being able to hang on to players as this happens, as it occurs, as it filters down. We got to start making way. But short term, I've got a bunch of 30-something-year-olds that are easily clearing up some space for us. So far so good on the rebuild project, as we have already made a good bit of progress just in the last couple of weeks. We'll see if the team itself starts to perform a little bit better. We've got a healthy Pedrero, but his time is coming on the trade market. We really need to make that happen before it's too late. And we've got a couple other pieces that are on the verge. So I think next time we're going to be looking into the trade market, continuing to look at the waiver wire, and start the reshape. Well, we've started. Continue the reshaping of our roster, and especially in getting younger. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.